Welcome to the Dark Zone, an adventure racing podcast.
What I'm planning and the bones of it, and it works, moving down the road as we're building it. This is going to be epic. It has a very, I think already from what I've seen and my scouting, it has a very expedition feel to it.
Okay, you people sit tight, hold the fort, and keep the home fires burning. And if we're not back by dawn, call the president.
You're going the wrong way! What? You're going the wrong way! He says we're going the wrong way.
Oh, he's drunk. How would he know where we're going?
Yeah, how would he know? Thank you. Thanks a lot.
The sun is setting as the sky turns pink. The mountains are calling, and all I can think of is you, my friend, my partner in crime. What you doing today? What you doing tonight? I will run with you till the river runs dry.
The Dark Zone is happy to add a new sponsor. Welcome to Proudy's Chimney Sweep. They are the preferred chimney sweep service company of 99% of adventure racers in the Shenandoah Valley. Their line of Regency wood stoves and Ventus fireplaces are guaranteed to keep your socks dry. You can always count on Proudy's to make sure your wood stove is ready to heat up your ramen on the coldest of winter days when those unfortunate power outages happen with no warning. Give them a call. More than happy to hear from you. Their website is www.chimneysweepva.com. That's right, Proudy's Chimney Sweep at www.chimneysweepva.com. Exciting news from our episode sponsor, Ascend Athletics. This spring, Ascend will be celebrating the relaunch of their 9-year-old program in Afghanistan and the 1-year launch into Pakistan. Through sports and leadership training, Ascend has been reshaping educational and career opportunities for girls in these regions, championing gender equality, and creating a future where girls in society can thrive. Each girl Ascend supports becomes a door for many other girls, and this year they're aiming to reach even more. Ascend will be holding their second annual Hike for Her event in Virginia on June 1st, 2024. Visit the Hike for Her page at www.ascendathletics.org/attend events, that's one word, to learn how to register. Remember, Ascend is an international organization, so you don't have to be local to join in. You can become a sponsor or even create your own team from afar and hike for her on your local trails. And as a reminder, Ascend pays nothing for the sponsorship. We're happy to host them and to spread the word of their good work. Dark Zone number 95, everyone. Here we go. That's right, closing in on 100. Today's a special episode. We are joined by the race directors for the USARA National Championship, Michelle and Liz Faucher. Great episode. They go deep on the course. They talk about the terrain, being in Snowshoe, West Virginia, the course they're building. There's some beta in there for the racer. Can't go wrong. And we get deep into it. Also, before we start, I want to say thank you to our new musical intro. That is Devin Tracy. I had the chance to bump into Devin at a social function, and she's delightful and a bike packer and an adventurer, and her music is now our intro. I will put her link in our show notes, and I will put a link to the entire song at the end of the episode. So sit back and relax, enjoy this episode of The Dark Zone, enjoy some Devin Tracy. We're glad that you're here, and as we say, if you keep racing, we'll keep talking. The ultimate race of the year, if you will, aside from the wonderful 5-day races that we see in all the regional series, is the national championship. It becomes the centering point for a lot of racers. It's the culmination of a season. It crowns a national champion. And the bottom line, it's just a lot of fun. The adventure racing is not a large community, and we all come together around a certain race. And so I'm delighted for this episode of The Dark Zone to have in Michelle and Liz Faucher for Adventure Addicts Racing. They are the race directors, the course designers, the grand poobahs of this year's national championships. And we're delighted to have them. Michelle and Liz, welcome to The Dark Zone. Congratulations on hosting nationals.
Thanks, Brian. Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
First question, let's kind of give the logistical information to get started now. Mm-hmm. Host city, location, date. What are the logistics that wrap themselves around this race?
Yeah. Okay. So it's going to take place the end of September, last weekend of September. I think the 26th through the 28th. And it's really the latest we could go in West Virginia. It's going to be in West Virginia because of the weather and the threat of snow, actually, in October for the race location. It's going to be launching out of Snowshoe Mountain Resort, which is actually the highest point and or area in the state of West Virginia, just below 5,000 feet. It's going to be a 30-hour race, 31-hour race, maybe. We'll see. No, I'm just kidding. 30-hour race, trekking, paddling, mountain biking, and of course, navigation. And last weekend of September, it's going to be awesome. We're excited. We can't wait.
So we've had the chance to talk to Nationals race directors over the last several years, and every race has its own sort of flavor, right? Out west, it was high desert. It was a lot of climbing, a big descent. We saw when we were in the Midwest, it was a lot of tricky navigation, right? The Paula Waits course, not a whole lot of big features. Vermont had a lot of elevation, had a lot of gain. And that's what's wonderful about moving the national championship around the country, is that every region has its own flavor, has its own challenge. When you think about the race and you think about what you're putting together there, how would you describe the nature and the flavor of nationals being held in West Virginia? Yeah,
that's a loaded question for this area of West Virginia. This is a special place, Snowshoe Mountain. It is entirely surrounded by the Monongahela National Forest,
which we call the Mon. The
Mon. The locals call it the Mon. I am a local at this point in time, so I'm calling it the Mon. And so it's so this area of West Virginia is really unique within the state because this forest is massive and it covers so much land, and in the middle of it sits this just really incredible resort high up at 5,000 feet. It's a really unique ski resort in that it's inverted. So the skiers ski downhill and then they come back up to the top of the mountain. Usually it's the other way around.
Oh, wow. So the base camp is at the top.
Yeah, it's on this incredible ridge called Cheat Mountain, and the views are spectacular. It's on the highest plateau in the state of West Virginia. Two of the highest peaks in the state of West Virginia are right on their property or close to their property. It's in the mountains. It's in the Allegheny Range, this whole area. And then, of course, you have valleys on either side. So everyone thinks of West Virginia, they think of the mountains, right? The mountain state. Certainly, you're going to see a lot of them. But one of the things that makes this particular area, and I think this race course really special, is the ecosystem and the environment. Because of the elevation, there's many areas out there in sections that look like you are in New England or lower Canada. There's a lot of red spruce, incredibly dense, very thick, lush vegetation, almost intimidating to a certain extent.
Especially in September by the end of the season. It's had a chance to grow the entire summer. Right.
Big rivers, wild rivers. None of the rivers are dammed. Very rugged, very remote. It's the most rugged and remote part of the state. And I would argue, and I've been told this by a couple people, probably the most rugged and remote tract of land on the eastern seaboard.
That's a big statement between Adirondacks
it is a big statement, and I don't say that lightly.
Right.
It is no joke. If people are familiar with this part of the forest, I think they're going to know what I'm talking about. If you've never been to West Virginia, you're in for a treat. The old growth, the backcountry trails. There's 375 miles of backcountry trail systems in this forest. It kind of, there's sections out there because you're so high that, and because of the remoteness, really kind of have a feeling like you're out west. You're out in Canada, or in Canada. And you really don't have that like in Virginia, quite honestly, which is right over, we're bordering Virginia, West Virginia, not too far away. And so it's really this really special little pocket of the state with all of this: trails, rivers, mountains, everything connects. The railroad runs through this whole area. There's a lot of history, a lot of mining, a lot of logging. And so and then of course it's really just spectacularly beautiful, very scenic.
We just did a small walk around the property, and while we were staying at Snowshoe, and some of the pictures I got are just stunningly beautiful.
Yeah.
Just like you would not, they're otherworldly. They're that nice.
And going into, obviously, that's now, it's April of 2024. They're going to have a full season of summer, a full season of growth. And then then we're on the cusp of the fall. And to your point, the reason why you have it at the end of September is that you're up against winter, right? And you could have that kind of weather could come rolling in.
Yeah. So because of the elevation, this whole area of the forest tends to have its own ecosystem and weather, kind of almost a little bit like Mount Washington.
They got snow last weekend.
Yeah, it's been, I've been out there. To give you an example, 3 weeks ago, I went out for 2 days. I camped on the race course. That first day, it was 55, which was quite warm for that time of year. Beautiful bluebird day. Woke up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, and it was literally a blizzard coming down. Got up the next morning, there were like 4 inches of snow on the ground, completely out of nowhere. And the weather just changed like that because of the temperature. So it's generally when it's warmer down in the valley, it's always going to be about 20 degrees colder up in this area. On these big plateaus and mountain ranges in West Virginia. So the weather and the temperatures are definitely going to be a factor, possibly. Maybe we'll get lucky and it'll be warmer than normal. But I think that's something that people are definitely going to have to think about. Could be a very cold race, but it could also be beautiful and who knows. So
and hence why we call it adventure racing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
There's adventure to it. There's the unknown. So if I hear you correctly, as you paint a picture of the race course, there's always variables that come into a course itself, right? And there's all these things that kind of overlay each other. And it sounds like the picture that you're painting is that this feels like a challenging course for a challenging race, right? There's a lot there for everybody, and it's not. And and I think it's a fool's errand to really discuss difficulty of nationals race courses, right? I think that you're asking for trouble there. But I think what you're saying is that this course is legit in that sense, that there's going to be a lot of expectations for the racers.
I think legit is a good word.
Yeah,
we've used that.
I think the word epic is overused a lot in adventure racing for courses, particularly shorter courses. Under 30 hours. This course, if the course pans out the way I want it to, and the what I'm planning and the bones of it, and it works, moving down the road as we're building it, this is going to be epic. There, it has a very, I think already from what I've seen and my scouting, it has a very expedition feel to it.
Okay.
I sent some photos of the course and some video to my buddy, Paul Morris, who I race with, who's helping with the race. And the first thing he said to me was, "My God, it looks like, are you building an expedition course?" I was like, well, this terrain and topography kind of lends itself to that. And so our goal is to take it and make it 30 hours, right? And take all this great stuff that we have and all this land, east, north, south, west, and put it all together in 30 hours, make it doable, but make it very hard. It's always been my philosophy, and I've told anybody that would listen to this over the years, that this race, the national championship, I think should be the hardest race of the year on the calendar, personally. And I've done, 3 or 4 or 5 of them over the years. And so so there's going to be that fine line between making it very, very challenging, but also fun and doable. And we don't want to suck the soul out of people, the souls out of people, and I think it's going to be that balance between challenging, but enjoyable and scenic. And I think we can do it with the terrain and the topography and everything that we have to work with. It's a big landscape. It's a big canvas. There's a lot of stuff out there. My biggest challenge starting the course design, which I started probably back in January, was actually narrowing it down to where we were going to take.
Well, it sounds like it. Right? It sounds like as you describe it, as you talk about it being a 30-hour race, I hear you talking out loud about it. It sounds like you almost have a little bit of choice paralysis. You have so many options.
I was overwhelmed, quite honestly, in the first my first go around with maps and scouting. I was like, oh my gosh, where do I even take this? Where do I start it? Where, obviously everyone knows it's going to finish on the snowshoe property. Right. I mean, so, is it very linear? Is it a Rogaine? Is it a loop? And really what works best? How do we put it all together? How do we put mountain biking together, the trekking, and then of course the paddling, which is a big component. I learned many years ago with Odyssey Adventure Racing, working for them, that you've got to design your race courses around your paddle, really, right? If you're going to have a paddle. But overall, this course I think the big highlights for this race will really be the trekking and the mountain biking because of the landscape and the terrain. I think those are the things that are really going to stand out, particularly from a mileage perspective and time perspective over the 30 hours. I think there's always something in a race that really is sort of the highlight, or at least there should be, in my opinion, when you're designing a course. And for this guy, I think it might be the mountain biking. Snowshoe is world renowned for their mountain biking in their backcountry. The last 40 years, they have hosted the UCI World Championships. They have a mountain biking park. It's a big part of their operation outside of the ski season. They're sort of really in bed with the national forest and all the local trails, and everything's very connected. And there's a lot of incredible access. And just the building of trails and the systems and everything that they have in place. People come from really far away to mountain bike in this area. And so our hope is that we're able to show off some of that on the course.
It sounds like a really nice where you have infrastructure built around it, right? You have Snowshoe, you have their presence there, you have there's the ski mountain, you have the downhill mountain biking, the not even the downhill, but the regular mountain biking, combined with the fact that it abuts. And it sounds like it's on multiple sides, all of these other options when it comes to trails and it comes to water, all of that. And so you're daisy chaining together all those separate areas. And then as a course designer, you need to make decisions about and I have to tell you, I've been involved from a tertiary perspective as a course designer. I've been asked to consult on courses. I've raced on courses, and good course design is as much an art as it is a science, right? Yeah. You look at the quality of the racers, what you're asking them to do. You don't want to blow people out too much, but also they shouldn't stroll in, right? And I will agree with you. I will voice my sentiment too, that the national championship should be the national championship. Right. Not to take away from other races that we have. And you don't want to put people through a meat grinder just to put them through a meat grinder, but it should be a hard race. Like, to win this race requires you to really work really hard as a team against the environments and against other teams too. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. And so I think there's three groups of teams in this race, and there will be. There's going to be the top 10, top 15. They're going to kill themselves, right, to clear the course and get to the finish line. And there's no other option. Anything less is a disappointment. And then there's the middle of the pack, right? But the bulk of the teams, in my opinion, everybody from, the top 20 to 60 teams. I mean, gosh, we already have 70 some teams already registered.
Wow.
So you have those teams who know, I think right off the bat, we're probably not going to clear this. This looks a little overwhelming, but our job is to design it so that they can get through it. They have a great time. They challenge themselves. And we help them with the course design, with the TAs, with the optionals, whatever it may be, and help them get to the finish line in 30 hours. We can do as much as we can. The rest is completely up to them and the decisions that they make within their own abilities as a team.
Right.
And then you might have the 10%, the 15% that, this might be a little bit over their heads, quite frankly. But we're gonna do our best to design a course that they can still get through. and make it to the finish line in the 30 hours and still enjoy themselves and have a good time.
I think that's
those three groups. Yeah.
I love the fact that you broke it down that way, right? That there will be those that are going to go full gas in the very beginning, right? And to your point, like clearing the course is the only way you're going to win the race is to clear it, right? That's the way that they look at it. So they have to go through every single checkpoint along the way. And then from a mid-pack perspective, and as a solid mid-packer myself, the goal is to take a look at it and to understand the goal there is you have to know your own ability and you have to make decisions on the course, what you're going to go after, what you're not going to go after. And then obviously, to your point, there are teams that are going to challenge and try themselves on this really complex course. And for those who are at home right now, and you kind of, you've paused, you've put your coffee cup down while you're listening to this about how hard this course is.
I don't mean to scare anybody.
But you're being honest, you're being direct. But I love the fact that you qualified it, that as challenging as the course is, and it's rather challenging, that there's also the dynamic is in place where teams that might be over their heads have the chance to succeed inside the context of what they can do. Because we know from an event racing perspective that like you define victory in a lot of different ways, right? And to come out and to race national championship and have an honorable and strong showing as best as you can is as much a victory, in my opinion, as the person who stands on top of the podium, right? There are no moral victories in this world, but at the end of the day, you feel good about yourself being able to do that. And it sounds like as an RD that the two of you have really kind of brought that idea to the front. Like, this is going to be really, really hard. The teams that are going to win and work really, really hard. But for those other teams, it's worthy of your time and attention. You should come give this a shot. And the fact you have 70 teams already speaks to that, that people want to race. What do you have? Have you set an upper limit for team registration, or is that still open-ended?
So it's still open. There's the 10 qualifiers that they're saving spaces for. So that's 80 teams. A lot of it for us has been our ability to get boats. 80, 90 canoes, that's a lot of boats, a lot of boats to move. You got to think about the transitions, space, rivers, all that stuff. So we've secured, I believe, a little over 80 boats. So there might be room for a few more teams. But that's a decision that USARA is going to have to make.
Handles registration.
We're
handling
your job is to build the course. And they feel like, I got you.
Yeah, but from what I understand, it's already, I think they expect it to be the biggest field ever.
Yeah. Well, people have been asking me about this episode. That's why we're kind of doing it now. It's April. We're going to push this out as soon as possible. Yeah. This usually would be like a May or June episode. But people are itching to hear about the course, they're itching to do all of that. And you did answer one of my questions logistically, was the fact that boats will be supplied. So there's no pack rafting expectation, or you have to bring pack rafts also?
No pack rafting. Okay. Yep. Okay. It's quite complicated with a 3-person team. Yeah. And then that number one, and then I think maybe a little bit more of a barrier to entry.
Yes. Yeah. And while you could always rent, I know that Pack Rafting Adventures has a robust rental service. Yeah. That's an additional cost, and you have to get the boat, and you got to take care of it. The fact that the RDs are supplying the boats makes life so much easier. Yep. A 30-hour race is always an interesting time to race, right? Because for the most part, you wouldn't sleep during a 30-hour race. You would go straight through. You wouldn't do that. And you may not know the answer to this question, or you may want to disclose it. Have you decided on a start time? Because the start time plays a role in terms of sleep strategy. So I always like to ask about that.
Yeah, well, definitely in the morning. I think it's 9:00 is posted on the website.
Gotcha. Okay.
It might be maybe a little earlier. A lot of it will come down to the final course, some logistics, some safety considerations on the course, on paddling, right. Maybe the earliest we can start it probably. Okay. We'll see, but it will definitely be in the morning, 8, 9:00 ish. Yeah.
And it will start on the Friday morning and finish on the Saturday. Right. And the reason there being is that traditionally speaking, teams travel down on Wednesday and Thursday. They race Friday into Saturday. Saturday night is set aside for the banquet. And then Sunday, everybody travels home. Right. That's the rough outline we have all the time.
It's going to be one big party right there in the Snowshoe Village.
Right. So exactly. So it's all right there. So
there's a brewery right there. It's gonna be awesome. It's gonna be a good time. Party. Yeah.
It's a great way to cap off a wonderful season. And so far, and I know it's only April, but like the races we're already seeing come online are having a really good experience. So USARA is helping support all these individual race directors with all the regional series and all their own races. So that's a really, really good dynamic. Before I poke you for training tips for those who want to, we're going to make them wait a little bit longer. Logistical perspective. If people are traveling to the race, what are the approximate distances from like DC? Like what do they get to? How do they get there? Like, how hard is it to get there? And how would some teams, where would they fly into? Like that kind of thing.
Yeah. So it's honestly, it's a challenge to get to Snowshoe. It is very remote. You're going to hear that word over and over again, rugged and remote. The nearest, honestly, the nearest really big airports are actually going to be in Virginia, more than likely. Roanoke, Harrisonburg, Charlottesville. From DC, it is probably a 5-hour drive.
Okay.
Which would be the big airport nearby. Charlotte possibly could be 5 hours as well.
DC to Snowshoe is 230 miles.
Yeah. So it's, and then of course there's Charleston, which is the largest airport in the state of West Virginia, but that's still a good distance away, probably 2 hours.
I would highly recommend that if people are coming that they look on the Snowshoe website about getting to Snowshoe, because there are some challenges on certain roads. And so they need to know those roads and not follow a GPS.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the hardest part is getting to the start line is what you're saying.
No, I mean, I think my sense, I've looked at the registration list, and my sense is that there's a lot of teams that are coming from a distance where they'll be able to drive to this race. But obviously we do have teams coming from the West Coast and much further away that are probably definitely going to want to fly. And I believe you can ship your bike to Snowshoe as well. And that, I think all of that information is on the website.
Gotcha.
If you're traveling with your bike.
Gotcha. So it sounds like, and to your point, Snowshoe has a lot of infrastructure around it where they make life easy for you. Right. Okay. Very good.
Yeah. It's actually its own incorporated town.
Okay.
On the mountain, there's a church and a hospital and a grocery store and a post office and everything up there. So
basically we're all going to live there now. That's like our new house.
Yeah,
that's the USARA we're just going to take it over, and that's our home now. Right.
Well, by the end of this, Liz and I might own a condo there.
Right. You're going to be the millionth customer. Thank you for being here. They must just be, and I'm assuming Snowshoe has not hosted a national championship before.
Not for this race, obviously, not for adventure racing.
That's what I'm saying. Right?
They've done a lot of big mountain bike racing championships. The World Mountain Biking Marathon Championships is August 1st on their property.
Okay.
So they brought that back this year. They've moved it up earlier. And that's I think it's 100K marathon mountain bike race. And then there is, they do have some trail runs and trail races and ultras that go through their property. Gotcha. There's one in May that they're having a big one coming up. That's
nice for the racer too, because it's for all the logistics of getting to the race. It's always frustrating to have to worry about stuff when you get there, but the fact that they're ready for you makes a big difference, right? And I'm assuming
I think they'll be ready for us.
And in terms of I'm assuming lodging is done through them. Like you could
everything. It's all on the website.
Gotcha.
There's a grocery store. There's family activities. There's all sorts of stuff going on.
Yeah, gotcha. I mean, it's a great place to bring the family. There's so much to do. Never mind all the mountain biking, the hiking, the Cass Scenic Railroad. The highest, longest operating railroad on the East Coast that is really well known and very historic is right down the road. There's a lot of great recreation that you can get, your families can do, just hang out on their property.
Gotcha.
So there's a lot to do. I think it's a great event. If you're going to make a week out of it or make a vacation out of it, it's a great event to bring the family to. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what a lot of folks do. That there's, I'm of the opinion. I'm always like of the show up, race, go home mentality because you're busy on either end. But to your point, you're taking your family to a place that is built around that kind of infrastructure exists to go and have a good time. You don't necessarily have to fly in and fly out and do all of that.
Lots of different restaurants, lots of different activities to do.
Good. Yeah, I'm going to push for
on their property.
The whole village.
There's a Starbucks in their village square.
I'm on the way. So I think also too is I'm going to and the dark zone is going to be on site. Obviously, we'll be there and providing media and logistical support for the race. I'm going to push for it, try to set up possibly. It'd be great to have like a big screen set up in one of their lodges with a projector showing the race the entire time. Right. So people could sit in a common area and look at the race up on the screen and sort of get a sense of where it's going. And we'll talk more about that as we get closer.
That. We've talked to them about that. Yes.
Yeah. They would enjoy that.
Interested in dot watching.
Yeah. And
dot watching is a new thing for them. They don't have it in their mountain biking races.
Okay. Not yet.
And it's also a great safety tool for us for the course. Particularly the permitting has been particularly interested in the tracking.
Okay.
Because of the remoteness of the course. And that was a concern for them. How do you know people are going to be okay? Do you know where people are? Access in and out can be challenging. And so they were really happy to know that we have that sort of infrastructure set up for the course.
It's also interesting to point out too that adventure racers are their own kind of safety breed. Like you do this long enough, like you get yourself into something, you get yourself out of something. It's a very self-sufficient group for the most part. And those racing national championship on average are going to have their heads about them when things like that. And so it's really nice that you're able to bring, I love the Venn diagram here that you're bringing the race to Snowshoe. You're interfacing with them for the quality of the race that you're going to put on at their event, but also then you're bringing this 70 teams, right? We're getting towards 80 teams. There's over 200 people are going to coming in and take advantage of all of this. I love how it's all this 30-hour self-contained community is going to have a great experience. One thing we've held off, we're now at minute like 28 of the interview. So I've done this on purpose to the listener. People will tune into this episode because they're going to want some sense of like tips and hints and getting ready. And it's right. Caveat emptor, be warned, listener, is that the race directors are not going to tell you what is going to happen during the race now, but they're going to tell you, they're going to lead you in a proper direction. That if you want to have a good experience and if you don't want to show up 30 hours crying too hard, there are certain things that you should probably do starting now so that it goes better then. That being said, Fauchers, what do you want to tell the world about getting prepared?
Oh, yes. Well, let's see. So get on your bike, start riding, a lot of mountain biking, some climbing. You would expect that, right, in this race. I don't know if we'll have more climbing in this race than you had in Vermont, actually. The elevation gain and loss, I know last year was pretty substantial.
Yeah. That was a very hilly race. That was a lot of up and down.
But the fun thing about this area is that you're already so high that you really can't go any higher. So
you're already there.
Yeah, you're already there. It's all downhill until you have to go back up again.
Yeah. Well, I will point out that when I did a lot of mountain bike racing, if I was racing at a ski resort, I shuddered because I knew, right? It's like, oh, good. Yeah. It's a ski resort. Oh, look, there's a hill right there. I guess I know where I'm going. Right.
Yeah. Well, let me just say this. The finish line is at the top of the mountain. And you got to get up there.
Gotcha. Right. So finish on a climb.
Yeah. So definitely, get on your bike, ride those miles. If you've never done any like backcountry riding, if you have the ability and the opportunity to do that, depending on where you live, that's something that I think would be worthwhile.
So by backcountry, to define for the listener,
getting out and like in the wilderness,
right.
I'm not talking about a city park or a local state park.
Okay. A technical trail, baby heads on the ground, a little rocky, a little rooty, like be used to traveling over that.
Yeah. Maybe not maintained very well, but it's there.
Right. A little wild, a little raw.
Yep. And then the trekking, it's pretty dense. It's pretty lush. The woods can be dark, a lot of spruce, a lot of thick vegetation, thick terrain. I think navigation is going to be challenging because of the woods in certain areas on certain lakes. It's going to be the type of stuff where, you're looking off of the fire road into the woods and you're like, oh God, do we have to go in there?
Yeah. It's like a wall of green.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, there's could be some of that out there. And so if you've never navigated through that type of stuff, if you have the opportunity to do it or to practice it, it's going to be hard, particularly at night.
And to that point, I would make a recommendation. Everybody listening is try to find a local O meet. Maybe there's a permanent O course, and go and, to your point, go and do it either early in the morning or late at night, and get used to the idea of having a map in your hand and trying to navigate in the darkness. Because when you add in the thick brush with the nighttime, with that time of the year, it's going to be slow travel off trail.
I think so. Yeah, I think the trekking. Some of it, I think hopefully we'll have a good variety of it, but you can definitely expect some slow moving trekking for sure. And then of course the paddling, it's, I think we've already posted on the website. It will be on rivers, the paddling up to class 1 and class 2. If you've never been in a canoe, in a moving river, a remote moving river, you might want to do it over the summer, get in a boat with your teammates, and go paddle down a moving river. Depending on the water levels and all sorts of things, rocks and such. So I would make sure you're as confident and as comfortable going down a moving river in a canoe as you can be.
So let me ask you a question about the canoe. And you may not know the answer to this question about the canoe. Will a third seat be supplied, or teams need to bring it with them?
I believe teams are going to need to bring their own seats.
Gotcha. And for those who are out there listening, an upside down milk crate does not qualify as a third seat. Bring a third seat. Practice with a third seat. This is a PSA. You'll thank me. Okay. Yeah.
And there also might be some portaging, and we will update teams on that later down the road. But it might be mandatory.
Gotcha.
Portaging, and so I
it could be a dam, it could be a little bridge, like out of the water you're carrying it. Well, they need to bring portage wheels. I'm assuming now.
So right now it's suggested.
Gotcha.
We might make it mandatory.
Gotcha. Okay.
Based on some things, and we will give everybody a lot of advance notice on that.
Gotcha. And I don't want to. Another question too related to that, and you may not. This may be, I don't know, Brian. Will there be an expectation for wetsuits, dry suits, that kind of gear, or by that time of the year, you're okay in that water?
Yeah, not that we think, not that we know of. Definitely not dry suits.
Okay.
I don't think wetsuits. I think the water, because of coming out of the summer, I think the water could be quite warm.
Gotcha.
I think we might just have to wait and see.
Right.
It might be something where we have the 2-week forecast out and see where the trend is in the weather, and maybe make some recommendations. If you have a wetsuit and you want to bring it, throw it in your paddle bag, and you can make a decision at the race. Some of that I don't know if I could really answer right now.
Yeah, and nor should you. Like I said, this is, and for those of you who are racing, and Venture Addicts is great about this, is make sure you pay attention to the emails and the updates and the websites, because there's no doubt in my mind that the level of communication coming out of this is going to be quite strong. So while we're talking about it now in April, keep in mind that there'll be updates along the way. And to your point, that 2-week window makes a really big difference, because who knows what you're going to run into, and racers have to prepare for that.
Yep. And then, the weather, the environment, this could be a course where, in the middle of the day, it's 65 and beautiful. At 1:00 in the morning, it's snowing.
Right. Yeah.
Frankly, right. And it's below freezing, which is highly likely, late September overnight. My thought is, as long as you have the right gear and you're prepared, you'll be fine.
Gotcha.
So just, I think some of that comes down to experience and how much racing you've done.
Right.
So just be aware of that. And like I said, we'll have a good idea of what the weather's going to look like, hopefully 2 weeks to 10 days out, and we'll let everybody know.
Yeah. And so from a ballpark perspective, what they should do is prepare for, I always guess 40 degrees. I always guess a 40-degree temperature swing, 65 to 25. Right. And those are two extremes, but you're ready. Keeping in mind that 25 when you're wet is a lot colder than 25, right? And so there's that, you have to have and obviously there's going to be a mandatory gear list. There's actually, you have to have some extra clothes with you. There's a fleece, there's a rain jacket. There's, thermal regulation will be the order of the day, right? But that's the racer's job to take care of that. Like that's what makes adventure racing. Adventure racing is, it's up to the racer to manage themselves and to take care of all of that. And if they choose not to bring, obviously you have to carry mandatory gear. But if you choose to go lighter on your gear, that's a choice that you've made, and you'll have to suffer as a result of it. Or you enjoy the speed benefit of not having to worry about that. So that's the choice that they're going to make.
Yeah. So one of the things we did add to the list with USARA, the gear list, was a bivy. So we have a space blanket and a bivy, an emergency bivy, just because of the environment and the access. And something happens, you're going to be a lot warmer, curled up in a really nice quality little bivy than you are in your Walmart space blanket.
Right.
So that is on the website, I believe, for the updated gear. And it's something that might be new. The teams, I don't know if they've required a bivy per se per team before. But that's something I think that is on there.
Yeah, I don't tell you from an experience perspective, I will say that the Soul Bivy, and Soul is not a sponsor of the Dark Zone, that having the Soul Bivy, which I just used just down in Ozark, we had it handy. It's the weight of the Soul Bivy compared to the benefit of getting yourself in it it's a victory. The return on the investment of carrying it is completely worth it, because that's a great piece of technology. And it's important to point out, and it took a while for me to understand this too, that I don't carry the bivy for if I want to sleep. I carry the bivy for if I'm incapacitated and someone has to come and get me.
Exactly.
Because once you stop moving, all that energy that drops to zero. And if you're wet and you're cold, it gets a lot worse. So the bivy is legitimately a survival technique. Once again, I don't see a lot of people sleeping during a 30-hour race.
Yeah, no sleeping allowed. No sleeping allowed,
sleep.
Brian.
Yeah. We're watching your dots, people. If those don't stop moving, you're busted. No Starbucks for you after the race.
You could sleep later. Yeah,
exactly. It's only 30 hours.
Only 30 hours. You could do it. Yeah.
So you mentioned the space blanket, and so is it space blanket and bivy or space?
I think that's what's been added on there. Yep. Okay. Space blanket per person, and I think it's a bivy sack, one bivy sack right there per team.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense, because the entire team won't be incapacitated. It's really for the one person who takes the trip and a fall and has to be, they're out of commission until we can send help for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So don't want to poke at the course. So feel free to say, Brian, I don't want to answer this question. I don't want to ruin a surprise. And I want to, you mentioned the big three: trekking, paddling, mountain biking. Along the way, there are other racers, other race directors that add other special challenges into the course. You could certainly say, Brian, that is TBD. We're not talking about it. Or do you want to talk anything about they may run into out there on the course?
I'm not going to talk about it.
Good.
I don't. If they do, it's not anything that's going to be completely out of the blue and like, what is this? Huh? We should have known about this. There's always, river crossings, but mild, shallow river crossings.
Racing. Yeah.
Right? You're going to get wet.
Fording a river is part of the race.
Even if it's dry in a dry season, as they say, there's still water everywhere around in this area, all over the place. So wet feet a lot, I would imagine. And, but other than that, no, there's nothing else. There's no swimming,
no climbing,
nothing else like that. It's going to be pretty straightforward, pretty traditional to the three big disciplines, and then the navigation.
And it sounds like the way you described the course is that's challenge enough. Right. You don't need to layer in another challenge on top of that. Going through the big three and managing that is going to be important. And here's a question I'm not going to ask, and you're not going to answer, is I don't need to know how many different segments there are. That's a whole other, that's when you get closer to the race. Yeah. That's not that question will not be asked. Will you release a schematic in advance of the race?
I think we might. I don't know if we've decided.
I imagine we will.
Yes, why not?
I think we will.
Sure. There you go. Making big decisions right now.
Yeah, we'll see what we can come up with. I don't know if it's been done in the last couple of years for this race.
Okay.
Maybe it has.
It's only 30 hours.
It's only 30 hours.
Yeah.
What I will tell you is there will be no gear bins.
Oh, interesting.
No gear bins. Yes, that's a big one.
Ooh, say more. Of course, you're dropping that at minute 40. Say more about that. Some poor slob that stopped listening because he thought it was boring. No gear bins, buddy. You should listen to the very end. Do all the required reading.
You'll have your paddle bag, so you'll need a paddle bag.
Right. One per team or one per racer?
The paddle gear. Yeah.
One per team?
One per team.
Okay.
We'll probably let racers put other gear in the paddle bag, I think.
Right.
But there will be no gear bin. You other than your paddle bag and what you are able to carry on your bike, everything you need for the full 30 hours will need to be on your back.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, it's funny. I haven't been to the Nationals in a few years pre-COVID, and back then there was no gear bins either. I mean, you just raced. It was you left with food and off you went.
Yep.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I shouldn't be surprised by that. It's only 30-hour race.
30 hours.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just got back from Ozark. I got back from Ozark. It was like I moved to Arkansas for a week. So I'm thinking, I basically walk into my office with my gear bin on Monday morning, thinking this gear bin follows me around everywhere. Okay.
But some of that is the distance, 30 hours. Some of that is logistics, a lot of teams, a lot of gear bins, and some of that is really logistics in terms of being able to get vehicles and lots of trucks in and out of TAs.
Yeah, but you can't move them in a 30-hour race. On a multiple day race, you'll have teams on a section for a long time. You have a chance to load it. Sure. In a 30-hour race, you'll have the tail of the race will be really long.
Yep.
The logistics plan for a 5-day race is very different from a 30-hour race.
Yeah, agreed. Is there now? So as we go through here, we mentioned get on your bike. Similar to the elevation game, not unlike Vermont. You mentioned getting into backcountry trails, rocky, rooty, things like that. We talked about the idea of dense trekking. Question for you: I'm assuming, because this comes up in different races, some races some land managers require you to stay on a trail and attack from the point closest and then come back out to the trail. Am I assuming that the woods are wide open during this race? You can travel wherever you want, however you want?
More than likely, and hopefully, yep. There are some really, without giving too much away.
Right, and please don't.
There's some really special places in this forest that are very protected.
Okay.
And
endangered species,
and a lot of endangered species and all sorts of things floating around that we want to respect and protect.
Gotcha.
But we intend to have an extensive amount of off-trail travel and navigation that you would expect. And then on-trail travel, it's maybe just a combination of everything.
Gotcha. So to your point being wherever off-trail travel is limited, it's limited due for a certain reason. Like you want to protect a native species. It will
be because of a specific reason. Yeah,
gotcha.
More than likely.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. You mentioned navigation will be clutch. Obviously, with any race, it's clutch. But it feels to me, and I don't want to read too much between the lines here, that between the thickness of the forest, the overnight section of the race, between what you're saying, that people really have to bone up on their navigation. They really have to be prepared to do that at a higher level.
Yes. Yeah, I would say that's about right.
And that applies to every race, by the way. That's not just special for this race, but it just feels like for this one here that there's a bit more to it than usual.
Well, I'll give you an example. And I really don't want to scare anybody.
Right.
Because I don't mean that. I mean, there are some trekking legs that I'm working on that I won't do by myself. I'm going to have friends and teammates come out with me.
Gotcha.
And even, scout it or design it, or get through it. A lot of it's for an extra set of eyes and feedback, on the specific leg. Right. But some of it's just for safety, quite frankly. And nav. And this is the type of course where we would not allow, if this was not the national championships, we would not allow solo racers, and I don't think the permitting would allow it actually. Yeah. The nav is, I want it to be really challenging. I think it should be because of, once again, the national championships, but and we like strategy and making things interesting and fun. We like to throw some curveballs in there with some of our courses. It's my hope is that it's not a race necessarily where it's just going to be pure speed and fitness. I'd like to throw some strategy in there, really make people think about what they're going after and, what they're doing and things like that out on the course.
Well, that's the idea of forcing teams to make decisions around the race itself. Like, and course design is in many ways, you're building a better mousetrap. Right. So let's be honest, like and I don't know how specific you want to get into this versus mandatory versus optional points. And you might still be building the course. So feel free to ignore that question I just put out there. But in what I've seen, and I've seen races and experience that people have had, that when there's just this tremendous swath, if you will, of options. And there's a lot of points out there. And then teams need to make decisions about like, we can get there, we can't get here, we can get to, like it should be clearable for the top teams. It should require a lot of considerations for the mid-pack teams, but it shouldn't just be a drag race. Right.
Yeah,
and courses that are, and it sounds that this is not going to be a drag race. It's not going to be the fittest team is going to necessarily, the fastest team won't necessarily win the race. It's going to be the all-arounder team, which is what the national championship should be.
Yeah. And go ahead.
We try and design our courses so that they're enjoyable for the vast majority of racers, not just, I've done races in the past where they designed the race course specifically for the top 5 teams, and that was it. And so that seems grossly unfair. And so we try and make it so that everybody has a chance to reach their full potential within a race course.
Gotcha. Where it's not a meat grinder that people could push themselves as much as they want, and they can make those decisions on the course regarding where to go, what to do. But there's an upper limit to what they can do, and you're not limiting them by the course.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Got it. Okay.
And that's definitely our goal.
Yes.
Great.
It's
stuff.
our goal for all of our races, really.
Yes.
Obviously. But
Well, speaking of all of your races, tell us about the other races Adventure Addicts do. What else do you put on? What's right around the corner? Is Buff Betty right around the corner?
we do. We have the Buff Betty coming up June 22nd. At a brand new state park in Virginia, Occoneechee State Park. It's amazing. And what's really exciting about this race is our good friends Chip and Andrea of Team Disability are actually designing the race course.
Gotcha.
They're doing it all for us, and we're excited to see the final product. And they will be there as well that day. We'll obviously we will be there and fully present and race directing, but they are the course designers.
Right.
One of our goals as a nonprofit was to bring up other race directors. And so we think that this is a unique opportunity to be able to do that.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
sort of situation which is
about-
sort of, they're mentored by you, right? They designed the course and all the
We're
other
grateful
things.
that they're taking this on.
Yeah.
So, because Buff Betty is very special to us, and we have a lot going on this summer. And so we're grateful for their help in enabling us to put on Buff Betty.
Yeah, I've had the opportunity. I know Chip and Andrea well. I've had to race with them as well, and I think that when I read that they were involved in the Buff Betty course design, I knew you'd be in good hands. Yeah, they are strong racers. They've done a lot of racing. They have a lot of base and a lot of depth, and it's it's nice for you too because you're creating an avenue for them to develop their own skills under your supervision, dare I say, but then it gives you the chance to go and then work on nationals and think about that as well. So there's a lot there for you to focus on all of that. That's great stuff. So Buff Betty, any other events besides? So, I mean, big year, right? Buff Betty on one hand, nationals on the other.
No,
Not this year.
No, we're really spending a lot of time over the next 3 or 4 months in West Virginia.
Right.
I tend to sort of obsess a little bit over my courses. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
As a racer, it's a good thing. Thank you.
Yeah. And I'm very meticulous, and I try to leave no stone unturned, no fire road, no trail, no rock, no anything that I haven't been down and seen with my own eyes. And it takes a lot of time when you do that. And I'm enjoying it. I love it. It's one of my favorite things, designing courses and putting it all together. It's like a game to me. And it's a way for me I have no creative bone in my body from an artistic standpoint. And I kind of feel like this is something that helps me get the only creative juice I have going is building race courses like this.
Everywhere we go, she starts designing race courses. She sees race courses everywhere we travel.
And I think it's safe to say that, and not to overextend the example, but a well-designed race course is a piece of artwork, right? It has to be, and there's also the Goldilocks effect. It has to be just right, and it's hitting a moving target. And as someone who's had the opportunity to see race design up close, someone had a chance to it's a high wire act in many ways. Yeah, right? They're getting it right, getting it done the right way. I will tell you that, speaking as someone who has the opportunity, the gift, the privilege of looking in on the community, I firmly believe when I heard that you were designing, the two of you were designing the race course, I knew that the national champions would be in very, very good hands. It was very exciting to hear that the two of you would be doing that. And I agree with you, like getting everyone to the start line that's the hardest part, right? What's amazing is though, and I always think about is that the amount of time and effort for the 30-hour event is so disproportional, right? You spend months and you spend a year thinking about a course, and the race only lasts 30 hours, but it takes all that work and all that time to make it go well. It's like, it's when you watch your child go, like if your child is a sprinter, you spend 6 hours at a track to watch them run for 45 seconds, right? It's part of the dynamic there.
Exactly.
We've had a chance this evening to really cover a large swath of the race. What did I miss? Is there something that else you want to say about the race that you really want to leave the aspiring racer, the veteran racer with? Like what do you want to leave? What taste do you want to leave in their mouth about the course before we finish up here?
Our goal is to just take them on a journey through this really spectacular area of West Virginia, in this pretty stunning national forest. It's considered one of the sort of crown jewels of the National Forest Service, actually, the Mon.
There are so few wild places left on the East Coast that this is just a stunning and unique area.
Yeah. And so my hope is that we can take teams through it on a journey, on their bike and on foot and on a paddle, and show them some pretty special places that a lot of people don't get to see. Epic views, incredible old growth. My hope is that when everyone finishes the race course, regardless of really how they do, but as long as they get to the end and they cross the finish line, they just sort of say, that was something. Wow, that was pretty awesome, scenic and things like that. And I think this area and this location, it has all of that. And that's why we picked it. We picked Snowshoe. We thought long and hard about where to have the race because we were given the option of where we wanted to have it. Did we want it in Virginia? Did we want it, where? We've been thinking about putting on races in West Virginia for quite some time now. And so when we were given this opportunity and with this support, we just said, oh my gosh, this is where we have to go. You just need to take a look at a map of Snowshoe and the surrounding areas. And I think everybody will understand what I'm talking about.
Well, there you go, folks. Dark Zone episode number 95. Thank you to Liz and Michelle for coming on to the show, for telling us all about the national championships, giving just enough beta to keep those racers interested. Snowshoe is going to be a great place to hold an event. I want to thank Devin Tracy for coming on to the show with her musical intro, Like a River. If you stick around, you could hear the entire song at the end of this episode. If you like what you are hearing here, head over to your streaming platform of choice and like and click and subscribe and recommend. We appreciate all of that. The algorithm likes it. The more of you that do that, the more the Dark Zone is spread. We love having you as a listener. And we like to say, if you keep racing, we'll keep talking. Be safe and enjoy Devin Tracy.
Like a river we run in and out over the days. Like a river we follow our individual ways. But the river, it runs on